I spent 4 weeks in Seoul, but not as a tourist. I was here for work, working during the week and exploring whenever I could. No packed itinerary, no pressure to see everything, just taking the city in, one moment at a time. The more time I spent here, the less it felt like I was checking off sites on a list, and the more I found myself simply enjoying everyday life in the city. And somewhere along the way, it started to feel familiar.
Bring on fire, make me fire. 밤이 찾아오면 이제 내게 마음을 던져. You take me now, everybody dance now. Welcome to oh la 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 la. Señorita, hermosa contigo. Oh la oh la oh la la. The welcome to oh la 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 la. 뜨거운 밤, 우리 같이 춤을 춰. Oh la oh la oh la la. 내 몸에 타올라 뭐든지 준비돼서 나를 또 홀려봐 너의 그 눈빛만 보면 나 왜 자꾸만 심장이 이리도 날뛰는지 숨을 쉬며 네 가슴에 한번 탕탕탕탕 내 마음 한구석에 너로 또 물들어가 또 이렇게 나 너에게 한 걸음씩 점점 다가가 난 따라올라.
The first step to being able to move around Seoul freely was getting a transportation card. You can get one at any convenience store, such as GS25. They are called T-Money cards. Just be aware that when topping them up, only cash is accepted. One of the first places I explored in Seoul was Myeongdong Market. But before heading out of the metro station, I came across this cool underground shopping mall that's worth checking out. You can find all kinds of clothing, accessories, and souvenirs here. Even though Myeongdong Market can be quite touristy and crowded, I'd still recommend it to anyone visiting Seoul. It's one of those places that's worth experiencing at least once. You can find plenty of delicious food, and it's simply fun to wander around. In fact, I ended up coming back a couple of times during my stay. Hello, can I have one of these? Custard?
행복한 날들을 약속할게 너와 난 그렇게 웃어도 돼 저기 하늘을 봐 널 보면 미소 짓는.
Another place I decided to check out was Namsan Tower. You can either hike up the hill or take the cable car. Of course, I decided to take the cable car and enjoy the view along the way. Just be aware that on weekends you may have to queue for a while. In my case, I ended up waiting about 40 minutes before I could get on. Once at the top, it's just a short walk to the tower itself. Namsan Tower is also called Seoul Tower. The tower itself doesn't look particularly spectacular, but it's the views and its location on top of Namsan Hill, about 262 meters above sea level, that make it so special. Instead of buying a ticket to go up the tower, I decided to go down instead, for free. The lower levels offer plenty of entertainment, including gaming areas, photo booths, and other attractions.
그 무엇도 우릴 방해할 수 없어 널 위해 난 모든 걸 다 내어줄게.
I actually think the views from here are more charming than the ones you get from Lotte World Tower. Sure, Lotte World Tower is much higher, but you are mostly looking at the city through glass windows. Here you are out in the open with nothing between you and the city. If you are in the mood for drinks, loud music, and a night out with an international crowd, then I'd recommend checking out Itaewon. Seoul is a city that never seems to stop moving. But behind the skyscrapers, busy streets, and neon lights lies a much more complex story. To better understand the city and the country that shaped it, I spent some time at the War Memorial of Korea, a place dedicated to remembering the sacrifices and events that made South Korea what it is today. Normally, I'm not someone who visits museums very often or spends much time in them, but this one really surprised me. I ended up staying here for about 3 to 4 hours, and it sparked an even greater interest in Korean history. It's weird to think that even though the war happened decades ago, it technically still hasn't officially ended. I just finished my tour in the memorial. It took me 3 or 4 hours. You can learn so much about the history of the Korean War, the background. I can really recommend it. I was already on my way to get some food when I realized there was still a part of the memorial I hadn't explored yet. Outside, there's a large yard displaying real tanks, aircraft, and other military equipment. It was already 6 p.m, but I still wanted to explore the Gangnam district, and I was getting hungry, so I hopped on a bus and headed there. Being in Korea for several weeks started to make me curious about K-pop, so I took every chance I could to take a closer look.
Couldn't give it up. And all the times you said you wanted me, when you know we don't get along like we used to. Went along with everything you said.
you come to Gangnam, make sure to visit Starfield Library. With its cozy lighting and massive bookshelves, it's a special place not only for taking photos, but also for relaxing, learning, and if you speak Korean, reading a book.
I'm looking for love so blindly. I know that you were always how you using me, but I just had enough. And every time you said you ever wanted me, yeah. When you know we don't get along like we used to, when alone with
I have the impression that every text is in Korean. So no reading for me tonight.
never know. You got
This is a fun spot if you like the song Gangnam Style. Come here, press the play button on the screen and start dancing in front of the Gangnam Style statue. So I'm walking out towards the Bukchon Hanok village and there are so many police buses around me. I counted already like 50 of them. This is so funny because last weekend it was quite warm, about 19 to 20 degrees Celsius. This weekend it's very cold. It feels like -2, -1. Unfortunately, since it was the weekend, there were way too many people around, and it was difficult to get any good photos. The weather wasn't great either, so I decided to come back another day. Insadong is known for its traditional tea houses, street food, art galleries, and handcrafted goods. Since it's raining again, I thought it was a great moment for enjoying one of the traditional teas from Korea. And I ordered Yujube tea. It's really very interesting. I like it. It's rather sweet, but not too sweet, so I think it's perfect. So I made now some stop for having lunch and I ordered some bibimbap, which is a typical Korean dish. But first, some side dishes arrived, which are usually included with your meal in Korea. I also ordered rice wine for the first time. Let's see. My bibimbap looks promising. The salmon is very good. After being in Korea for about 2 weeks already, I've concluded that the food is very good, of course. Drinks like soju or this rice wine I tried, or beer, so the classic ones. I mean, when you order them, you get always a bottle and they are so big. So they are not made for one person, unless you drink a lot. This story I've seen in other places of Seoul. Now it was time to actually listen to some K-pop. Since I enjoy listening to music on vinyl, I asked in the store if they had any records. They only had one artist available, Lisa from Blackpink. At the time, I had no idea how famous she was internationally. Now I do. And it was quite cool, so I bought it as a souvenir. So I guess now I'm into K-pop. Ikseondong became one of my favorite spots to explore in Seoul. You'll find traditional Korean houses, also called Hanok, turned into trendy cafes, restaurants, and all kinds of small boutiques. actually get lost here in so many nice little streets full of boutiques and restaurants, bakeries, and places selling all kind of desserts. There are a lot of places with very nice gardens, but they are normally very packed with a big lane. This looks especially good. Here, thank you. 감사합니다. So I ordered a drink called cheese chocolate. It's cold. I'm very curious to see how chocolate tastes together with cheese. I definitely taste the chocolate. I think the cheese flavor is very mild, which makes it good. I like it. And I also have this cheese pie. Just saw some first cherry blossoms here in Seoul. It's very noisy in the streets of Seoul in these days because it's full of protests everywhere, demonstrations against the government. The Avenue of Youth is another lively spot in Seoul. You'll find plenty of restaurants and bars here, but it really comes alive at night. So I'll be back after dark. Right in the heart of downtown Seoul, Cheonggyecheon offers a quiet escape from the city. What was once covered by a highway has been transformed into this peaceful stream and walking path. I believe quieter than this, it doesn't get in Seoul. This is very peaceful here. Today, maybe it's not the best weather to walk here. Since it's Sunday, I believe there are less people, which is good, but less things happening. I think the other side is nicer. The weather is now so much nicer than when I tried to go today to the Bukchon Hanok village. But anyways, the place was so packed. I think it's not a good idea to go there during the weekend. Back at the Avenue of Youth, night had fallen, the lights were on, and I was getting hungry. It was time to enjoy some Korean barbecue and a bottle of soju.
Taking away my breath when you tell me that you think it's hopeless. Turning away again, telling you that we can work this out, but you'd rather drop it. It's a flop, better to leave it right. Normally hard to pull the trigger, but you did it. Yeah, you shot. Accelerated the plot just to say I forgot about the pain and the struggles we went through. You got the chicken away, promising nothing but better days. Now you're giving up all that we made. Too late to fix, you're telling me.
So now finishing the day strong with some Korean barbecue that is gonna come yet, and some soju, kimchi salad.
To make me into another story of what could have been. It must be to say that we have nothing left, to pray for something better, to make me into another.
So this is steak and this is pork belly. And here I believe I have some rice. Wait, this is hot. Normally, you are supposed to order the meat you want and grill it yourself. But I think the waiter saw me sitting there alone, not speaking Korean, and probably looking a little confused. So he offered to cook it for me. Now that's service. Okay, I had forgotten I also ordered these eggs By the way, you order everything from this tablet that is on every table. So I have drank this much soju, but there's no way I'm gonna be able to finish it all. It's 16% alcohol and 360 milliliters. It's difficult to finish it by yourself when you are just one person. Besides, tomorrow I have to work, so... But when I go out with my colleagues, then this is nothing. Koreans drink a lot soju and beer. So for all that amount of food, it was about 320, 330 grams of meat, plus soju and rice, steamed eggs. That all was 45,000 won, which is the equivalent to 28 euros. So I think that's a very good price for a very good food. The Hyundai Seoul is a department store I definitely recommend. You could easily spend the whole day here, which is pretty much what I ended up doing since it was raining outside. So I bought this vinyl with the soundtrack from Dragon Ball, and it was quite expensive, like 43 euros, but you can get the tax refund here almost everywhere. The problem is just that I didn't have my passport with me. So these are lessons learned next time when I go shopping with my passport. But anyways, I'm happy to have this vinyl from Dragon Ball. Just looking for the perfect place for eating because I'm very hungry and I feel like sushi maybe. You get this for free, which is some kind of soup, and as always in Korea you get water. How does that look? Actually, it looks blurry. Sorry about that. The wasabi is going into my nose. Spicy. And then drink a little of my soup before it gets cold. So good. I've been eating every day at work, in the canteen, in the restaurant, Korean food, a lot of this, and I love it, but sometimes I need a break, so that's why I go for sushi. But maybe for dinner I might have Korean food again. Now I've got some tempura. This is takoyaki. Octopus in the inside and something else I don't remember, but I remember that they are very hot. Really good. This is a booth where you can record your own ASMR. I'm not really into that, but I thought it was interesting that you can do something like this here. So I've got the very typical in Korea cold noodles with some meat, and this is like a hamburger here. The noodles are so thin that it's difficult to grab them, at least for me. very good. But I've had even colder. Like these ones are cold, but I've had other ones that had ice, so they were ice cold. Really struggling to get them out here. Today I'm starting the day with the Botanic Park of Seoul, which is a highlight from Seoul that I believe is not so visited, but it's right by my hotel, so I thought I should go pay it a visit. I was actually walking in the wrong direction. So in Seoul, in April this time, there's still the transition between winter and spring. So that's why we cannot see cherry blossoms yet here. But I'm pretty sure in 2-3 more weeks, it's gonna look very beautiful here. With the weather finally on my side, Seoul Botanic Park felt like the perfect place for a slower morning away from the crowds. The park brings together plants from around the world in one of the city's largest green spaces. I'm walking now towards the Olympic Park. Frankly, I didn't expect to meet so many people here. It's very crowded, so it must be good. As it turns out, one of the reasons there were so many people here was a concert taking place later that day at one of Korea's most famous venues, the KSPO Dome, where many major K-pop acts perform. Olympic Park was built for the 1988 Olympics, but today it's one of Seoul's most popular places to walk, cycle, and escape the city's fast pace. The park itself is enormous. At around 1.4 million square meters, it's one of the largest parks in Seoul.
Way down in the valley, there's a summer past I know. Can't reach me, can't see me, you can't find me at all. In the cool of dusk, twilight in the sky now, last light resting on the pines. I reach out to touch the memory before me.
At 555 meters tall and 123 floors, Lotte World Tower is the tallest building in South Korea and one of the tallest buildings in the world. By the way, I only bought my ticket the day before. At least during spring, it doesn't seem like you need to book very far in advance. The sunset is gonna be in about 40 minutes, I believe, and I'm now waiting for the elevator to go up. 486 meters, this is the only place in Lotte World Tower where you can step outside and feel the wind. Even here though, you are still looking at the city through glass. Right now the sun is almost completely gone. It's a mix of clouds with smog that make the sun to disappear earlier. Lotte World Tower is connected to Lotte World Mall, but there's also a Lotte department store right next door. I definitely got confused at first. There are just so many malls in Seoul. Lotte World Adventure is one of Seoul's most famous amusement parks. It has both indoor and outdoor areas. It's not Disney, but it honestly looks pretty entertaining. I'll definitely check it out next time. So going now for my second try in Bukchon, Hanok village. Since the first time I came, it was very chaotic. It was raining and there were a lot of protests, so it was very loud. And there were so many people because it was the weekend. Today it's Friday and it appears to be better. What I like most about Bukchon is that it doesn't feel staged. It's a historic neighborhood, but it's also a place where people still live their everyday lives. Just be aware that access for tourists is restricted daily from 5 p.m. to 10 a.m. By the way, in this place you cannot enter with your shoes. So you leave them outside and then you sit here on the floor, just trying to get comfortable sitting on the floor. This is my jujube tea. It looks delicious. I also ordered some dried tangerines with honey. So jujube is some kind of Chinese fruit. It's also called like the Chinese dates. So good. This is really dry. You definitely can taste the honey a lot, but also I can taste some tangerine flavor. And now I'm heading towards the biggest palace here, the Gyeongbokgung Palace. Since I took a different route to the palace instead of entering through the main gate, I happened to come across the National Folk Museum of Korea. I didn't actually visit the museum itself, but the gardens were beautiful and well worth a stop. These gardens are part of the Gyeongbokgung Palace complex. If you are wearing a hanbok, which I wasn't, you can enter for free. Otherwise, the ticket is still quite inexpensive. Of Seoul's 5 royal palaces, Gyeongbokgung is the largest and most famous. Built in 1395, it served as the main palace of the Joseon dynasty and remains one of the best places to get a glimpse of Korea's royal history. And just like that, my time in Seoul was coming to an end. Before heading to the airport, I made one final stop at Hyundai Premium Outlet Gimpo. And with one final bibimbap before my flight, my 4 weeks in Seoul were coming to an end. This city surprised me in more ways than I expected. But as it turned out, I'd be back sooner than I thought. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment and subscribe for more travel adventures. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.